Hey y'all, how you doing? My name is Lauren B. Welcome to the Untitled Tarot. So this is going to be a collective reading today. Originally it was going to be a Libra reading. I filmed 2 full Libra readings yesterday and they just didn't quite feel right. And one of the messages that had come through in that Libra reading was that Libra was searching for a very big answer, or they wanted access to a very big energy, but they were having a hard time pulling it in because the lens that they were looking through was too narrow. And it was only halfway through pulling cards for this reading that I actually realized there was a message for me, because I was trying to pull in like this collective message or like this collective answer through like this very small lens of a zodiac sign. So congratulations, I played myself. But I pulled out a spread today. And it makes sense. It makes much more sense than the readings I did yesterday. So we're going to put this as a collective reading. I'm praying that after I get this reading out of my spirit, I am able to do like a proper reading for you, Libra. I was like, why does Libra not want to talk to me? It's because this collective reading had to come first. So I combined the Rider-Waite Tarot and the Wild Unknown Spirit Animal Oracle deck. It's not a combination that I would typically put together, but for some reason, if you guys have these 2 decks, combine them because they go together like peanut butter and jelly. I'm just telling you right now. So we're going to pray. We're going to dip into this message. I hope it goes well. And then we'll eventually move our way on to Libra. Yes? Wonderful. Father God, thank you for bringing me and the collective in for this reading. I ask that you give me wisdom, clarity, and discernment to deliver these messages accurately for everyone's highest of love, light, alignment, and assignment. We praise you, we love you, we thank you always. We give you all the glory and the honor for these messages, to the utmost high. Amen. They just got jokes today. Just like the whole team's got, I feel them laughing at me. It's like one of those old, movies or one of those cartoons where it's like the kid sitting in the corner with a little bit of that, like the dunce hat. That's me. I have the dunce hat on right now, but I get it and I'm doing it and I don't need your shit. Like, I just don't need the shit right now. It's just poking fun at me. I digress. So, you right there. You're coming out as the Knight of Pentacles. This is sort of representing the collective energy right now. It's this very slow but steady pace. But when I look at this knight, he has this coin in his hand, and it's the feeling of like, this is what you want to offer. It almost feels like a coin for the boatman, which is also a message that had come through in one of the multiple readings I had done for Libra yesterday, was that they were trying to like offer a coin to the boatman to get into the other world in order to pull in this energy that they felt like they needed, or in order to pull in this big answer that it was that they needed. But the 9 of Wands comes out next. And so this is really indicative of that blockage energy that we have been moving as a collective, that you have been moving forward, but sort of hitting this blockage. And I almost see this knight with this pentacle sort of looking at this guy with the Knight of Wands, like, let me into the velvet ropes. Like, I have this offering, like I have this thing that I want to add into the mix. And this 9 of Wand energy is almost like security, like kind of guarding the perimeter, going, are you sure? Are you sure you want to go back there? The dragon eye comes up next, which for me always comes through as like this eye of God, or it's like the eye of Ra. It's this, are you sure? It feels like a divine. This doesn't feel like security at the bank. This feels like a spiritual energy that is intentionally not allowing people behind the magic curtain. And it's sort of like decreed by the cosmos, by the divine, with this dragon eye saying, are you sure you want to look behind that curtain? Because once you look behind that curtain, like, you can't unknow it. You can't unsee it. But there's such a sense of like innocence and even like service that comes forward with this Knight of Pentacles, going, please, please. The zebra comes up next. And so this kind of feels like your response to this energy, who's saying, are you really sure you want to come back and look at kind of what's in the secret sauce? And this zebra energy, zebras blend in, right? Like that's part of the reason that their coloring and their coats look the way that they do. It's you kind of going forward and saying, yes, like I'll blend in, like I won't step on anything, I won't get in the way, like I will blend in. But you have this highlighted third eye area. It's like there's something just so curious to me about what is back there. I have to know. I feel like I could offer something to it. I feel like I could add something to it. The Wheel of Fortune, it's like, it just feels like it's a good idea. Like, it just feels like I'm supposed to go back there. So can you let me through? So what comes next is the Eight of Cups. I know this is a really good deck combination. I just heard you say that. The Eight of Cups comes next. And the Divine, this guy here, the boatman, this Nine of Wands energy is like, all right, if you insist, you can't unsee it, but if you really want to know, go forward. So I see you kind of making it past this sort of psychic blockage, like you cannot see past this point. And the first characters that you're seemingly running into is this Emperor and this King of Swords. They actually look a little bit surprised. I see just the way that they're holding their instruments. Like I'm looking at the way this Emperor is like holding his staff, and this King of Swords is sort of holding this sword that he has. It's this idea of protectiveness or almost defensiveness. It's nobody's supposed to be here. It's like, what are you doing back here? It's almost part of it's surprise. It's like, I can't believe that collective. I can't believe that they would actually get this close to us. I can't believe that they want to know so bad. Like they'd be willing to come behind the magic curtain. The Seven of Swords comes up next. And so one part of the surprise is perhaps that you realize that there is a magic curtain, that there is like a point of vision that you have not been able to see around. It's almost as if it's kind of supposed to be like an invisible wall, like you're not supposed to know that it even exists. The Seven of Swords talks to me a lot about like mental adaptability. Like it's like a sleight of hand sort of trick. Like there's been a lot of illusions put in front of this velvet rope, and it's kind of surprising that you have been able to pick up on it. And after sort of all of these warnings that have come through, that you'd still want to get close enough to kind of perceive what they are doing. But you are, and so it feels like they're going to show you. So what's interesting is the Tower card comes up next, and it's followed immediately by this Ten of Pentacles. And so there's this idea that the Emperor and the King of Swords, which are coming through as like authorities, like spiritual authority energy. I suppose this could play out very practically as well, but I'm just going to call them like I see them. And so these feel like the word principalities actually comes forward to me. Principalities are kind of in the same like deacon as like archangel. So it's like sort of these intense spiritual energies. They're like, all right. And they're showing you this tower with this 10 of Pentacles. And when I pulled this, I heard the city is on fire. And maybe that's part of this Seven of Swords energy, is not wanting other people or the collective to know that the city, Paris, is burning, and like the city is on fire, and there's like a lot of stuff going on behind the veil that we haven't wanted to show you because like we didn't want to freak you out. But here's the kicker, is that the Fox comes up next, and the Fox is also a Seven of Swords card for me. This is almost like a magician energy. It's Gemini energy. It's sleight of hand. And this Fox is always like this divine trickster that comes through. It even looks like he has this little smirk on his face. And so when the Fox came out next, I looked at this, the city is burning, and I thought, is it? Is the city burning? Or is that the sleight of hand? You can't come back here because we don't want you to see all of the chaos sort of going on in the cosmos, and all of these timelines being ripped down, and all of this, Paris is on fire. But what if that's not actually true? What if this Fox is letting us know that this is a sleight of hand? And almost this energy, this resistance to break through to the other side, the idea that you're going to see something that is disturbing or kind of scary or like really combative, what if that is the illusion? So that way we can't actually see what this 10 of Pentacles is. You know, there's all of this talk about the Pluto return in the US and everything's going to hell in a handbasket and all of this stuff. And so I feel like there's almost this collective bracing for impact. And some of it, I think, comes from the fact that we've been hit so many times over the last 3 years throughout this pandemic, and our personal gnosis and our spiritual awakenings and our, you know, all of it, just all of it. We're so used to this impact. And so it's almost like we are attuned to the frequency of the tower. It's like, oh, it's Tower Tuesday. Great. You know what I mean? And so that's why it's kind of strange. It's like, why would they prevent us from seeing like collective tower moments? Because we're so used to them by now, right? It's like ordering a side of fries. Tower moments, they just come with the meal at this point. But this fox tells me that that's actually not true. That maybe picking up on this tower energy is actually become so familiar to us that we're actually not even interested in it. And so when we pick up that frequency, we just immediately like turn our gaze. It's the sleight of hand. When in actuality, what they are guarding or keeping out of sight is this 10 of Pentacles. It's a much more positive vibration and frequency. And because it is a minor arcana, it's earthly, it's physical, it's tangible. They ain't gonna fool me. Not today. Not today. Because the World card comes up next. And so when I'm looking at this World card, it feels like something that has already been set in motion. It's the idea of waiting for something to come in, waiting for something to start, but it's the idea that this World card exists like outside of time and space. Like the deal is already done. The wheels are already in motion. And so it's funny that it's like when you look behind this curtain, collective, like you're not going to be able to unsee it, like you're not going to be able to unknow it. But in reality, it's something that is already done. It's already clicked in. It's already happening. And so this is where I'm seeing like all of this divine trickster, and it's like this illusions. It's like when you have 3 cups in front of you and you put a ball under one and you start shuffling them around, right? It's like you have to pay like real close attention because there's just a lot of tomfoolery sort of amok. But this is something that has already been put in place. In the World card, all of these symbols in the corners, they're representative of the 4 fixed signs. So this is something that has literally already been fixed or fused into place. The Lamb comes up next, and it's coming out in reverse. And when the Lamb comes out upright, I'm sorry, my throat chakra is going crazy and my wrist hurts. So it's like I'm going through it a little bit too. But when this Lamb comes upright, it speaks to me of like purity and like innocence and like, you know, fleece as white as snow. But when it comes in reverse, it comes forward as like naive. And so the crow follows it. And so part of the message seems to be is that if you were to look at like just the surface of the situation, like very innocently, right? Like not really reading a lot of nuance into it, it might be really easy to like see this tower. But if you were to actually look through the lens of the crow, which is much more metaphysical, it's not nearly as sunny or naive or innocent. It's this metaphysical, like occult lens, right? See how he even has like this world like right in his claws, that you would actually be able to see like what was happening for real. It feels like there's multiple layers of illusions and like distortions, but it's like all leading up to this like drum roll sort of thing. And if you look at it through like your human eyes, or if you look at it through like a very innocent or non-suspecting lens, you would not pick up on these wheels that have already been set in motion. You have to look at it through a lens of the occult, of the metaphysical. Now, part of what seems to be happening is the star is coming out in reverse with the 3 of Cups. So part of the reason perhaps why we have been having a difficult time looking around the corner is because we haven't been looking through this lens. Part of the reason we're not looking through that lens is because of this Three of Cups, which is coming through as like comfort and joy. It feels like a lot of presence. The Star card, oftentimes it talks about travel. And so it's like the inability to travel to different times, to travel to sort of different dimensions or frequencies of energy where we could access this, right? Because we've been looking at sort of like these very practical or these very small cups. The Star to me also talks a lot about taking sort of the metaphysical or like these spiritual notions or ideas and being able to bring them into the physical. That we kind of took a break from that because we learned how to move slow. We learned how to hold. See how it's all sunny back here? It's the idea of trying to keep the idea of like a bright future, even though it always seems to come with like a side of something. It always seems to come with the side of tower moment, right? We've moved into like these positions of service. Let me add, let me offer, let me help, and I think that's such a beautiful vibration to be in, even with this Three of Cups. It's the idea that we've been working on focusing on joy and celebration and being social and connectivity, right? And I think that that's like a really beautiful thing, but it's also been part of the process, or it's been part of the process, but it has led to the delay of us being able to bring things from the energetic into the physical. And part of it is because we were focusing too narrowly on what exactly we were trying to do or bring in, and maybe not considering how it was fitting into like the whole game plan, into the entire collective energy. I hope that makes sense. But the Hermit comes out in reverse. And so it's this idea that, again, if we were able to go in to sort of this moment of reflection, kind of go into the darkness, we would be able to perceive like what is done in the dark, what this sleight of hand really is, because the cosmic egg comes up next. And in this deck, this actually is kind of like my world card. So we're seeing it twice come out, like this energy of kind of completion and things are already in motion. This egg, it always comes forward a little bit like a rebirth, right? Like beginnings are preceded by endings. But it's got all of this coloring on it, which it brings me up. It brought me up since I was a young lad. It brings up the idea of like an Easter egg, right? Which again brings up fertility and rebirth and all of this kind of stuff. And the snake has kind of, it's wrapped itself around this, and it's this pressure, it's this constriction. And, you know, I think this is a lot of like the birthing pains and the growing pains that a lot of us have been experiencing for a long time. But there's something about, again, these wheels have already been set in motion, that it feels like this is something that we've been waiting for. We're waiting for a rebirth. Like we're waiting for a positive change. Like we're waiting for all of these things. But if you think about a snake, a snake's power does not come from its venom. A snake's real power comes from its ability to stay very silent. And so that seems to be this message sort of wrapped up into this rebirthing, waiting for this egg to kind of crack open and pour new life onto all of us individually and as a collective. It's part of the message of this thing has already happened. It's already begun, but we haven't realized it because it's been so silent. It's been behind the magic curtain. Now, death in reverse comes up next, which is this idea that we feel as though we've been in this very prolonged death process, is very long deconstruction process. But the earthworm comes up next, which feels like the energy that we're seeing in this snake card is sort of starting to loosen up, and it's starting to breathe. And so the pressure or the energy that we perhaps have been feeling or interpreting as this prolonged death process is actually the pressure of us not almost contracting, but expanding. When I see the earthworm, I always think of compost. I think of like recycling. It's the idea that, you know, earthworms don't have very good sight, but they have very good senses, and they're able to take scraps and stuff that has been deconstructed and stuff that is old and sullied and, you know what I mean, it's sort of rotted, and be able to turn it into fresh mulch for really fertile soil. And so the pressure that we're actually experiencing now, we may be seeing it as this continual death process, but the pressure we're actually feeling is similar to the pressure that like a leaf or a stalk might feel when they're trying to make their way up and out of the ground. I hope that makes sense. The sensation of pressure, the sensation of something is happening is the same. But what is actually happening is different. Again, it's like the Tower and the Ten of Pentacles are these really powerful energies. Like, they are unstoppable. You can't stop a Ten of Pentacles, just like you can't stop a Tower. But because they come through with the same level of kind of force or structure to them, we may not be perceiving it as the Ten of Pentacles. We may just be perceiving another Tower moment, when in actuality, it's the sleight of hand trick to get us to keep our eyes off of what is actually coming out of the ground, which is not fire and brimstone. It's actually these 10 pentacles. It's actually all of this growth. The pressure feels the same. But again, unless you were reading into like the complexities of what was happening on a micro and a macro level, unless you were looking through that metaphysical lens, just very innocently, you may interpret that pressure as being something that is negative or destructive, when in actuality, it's incredibly positive and constructive. Now, the raccoon is coming out in reverse following that. The raccoon, to me, talks a lot about resourcefulness. It talks about adaptability. Again, being able to like find sustenance and resources in the dark or in places where people normally wouldn't look, right? You would take the stuff out of the garbage and you would use that to make compost, right? It's like all of these scraps. But part of this rigidity or this lack of adaptability or resourcefulness, the way it's coming through seems to be around something on how we look for messages. Again, with that crow, how we pull in messages. It's almost the idea, because this has already been set in motion. It's like it's already coming out of the ground. But because, that's so interesting. But hold on. Too many people talking. Too many people talking. So the example that I could use is sort of like a little acorn, right? So if you plant a little acorn, when it first comes up, it may come up as just like a few little leaves. You might not realize like what it is, because you're not looking for an oak tree, or you are looking for an oak tree, but all you're seeing is like this little sprig. And so it's kind of similar. Like if you're looking for the oak tree, if you're looking for the tower, if you're looking for some big event or something, you're totally gonna miss like what is coming out of the ground. Because big things come in small packages. Big beginnings, big shifts come through, not like the Kool-Aid man busting through the door. The biggest shifts actually come in the most subtly. And because we've been looking for an oak tree, because we've been looking for some big, huge, noticeable shift, we've missed what has already been put in motion and what has already been coming out of the ground. Because the rabbit and the King of Wands comes up next. And so rabbits talk a lot about fertility and abundance and all this really beautiful stuff. And this King of Wands is a character who's always looking out on the horizon for like what's coming forward, like what's coming next. But if you think, I know these cards, they look very similar in size, but if you think about a man and a rabbit is quite small. And so it really is just kind of bringing back home that message of we've been looking for shifts or abundance or fortune or like a positive change, but we've been looking at it in a very narrow lens. It's similar to how I was struggling with the Libra reading because I was trying to pull in a collective message through this very tiny lens of a single zodiac, and it doesn't work. But meanwhile, there's this cheetah, which is much bigger than a rabbit, and it seems to kind of sneak up behind us. This cheetah card talks about opportunities. It talks about energy, movement, coming really fast. It's like a strike when the iron's hot. Once a cheetah is in motion, it's not a fly ball. You can't catch it mid-flight. It's gonna get to where it's gonna go. And so while we've been focusing on this very kind of small entry point of the energy being very kind of fixed, right, in the way we pull in certain messages, we've been completely missing this huge energy that is about to sort of hit us like a freight train. And part of what happens on that point of impact is this moth card, which for me always talks about like this conscious or this psychic expansion. It's like this light bulb moment, like this sudden realization that it's coming out of the shadows, it's coming out of the mystery, and it's the 10 of Cups. And so it almost feels like one of those stages that has like the platforms that raise up in the middle when like the artist comes from like underground and like moves their way up. It sort of feels like that. Like we have been looking for mighty oak signs or messages, but the way the messages are coming in are very small. But what we have been looking for, like in our lives, the shifts have been very small, but they're actually coming in very big. And so there's this funny mirroring. Again, it's that little ball underneath all of these cups. And so the messages you think are going to be big, but they're really subtle. You barely even notice them unless you were really looking. Whereas what you're looking for in your life is like kind of small, but it's actually coming in really big. And like all of a sudden it feels like this 10 of Cups sort of rises from underground. Even like the wingspan and the wingspan of these people even kind of matches up a little bit. And it's like the integration of the new physical timeline. It's not the energy, it's how the physical world shifts around it. And it's kind of funny because the 10 of Swords comes up next, which is sort of this idea of, are you fucking kidding me? Like I've been out here like doing all this shadow work. Like it's the idea, like I keep plugging away in the darkness. I keep plugging away in my own darkness. But meanwhile, you're telling me that what is coming up is this 10 of Cups. The King of Cups comes up next, and so there is almost a little bit of this annoyance of like, I've been bracing myself for impact, I've been bracing myself for Pluto, I've been bracing myself for the fall of the patriarchy, I've been bracing myself for all of this stuff. And meanwhile, what you're actually bringing up is something that's really beautiful, but it's also something that you want. And so again, that's kind of this like mixed feelings energy that I'm pulling in. It's almost like, why did I waste my time doing that? And I almost feel like the divine going, well, we didn't tell you had to. Like we didn't tell you like what you could focus your energy on whatever it is that you want, right? It just depends what lens you're really viewing it through. Like that's the difference in the messages and the guidance that you're gonna get. But it's almost the idea of, I'm so annoyed I've braced myself for impact. And what's actually coming forward are these big, like really sweeping changes in the community, like in your life, that are really positive. We have the 10 of Pentacles and the 10 of Cups. That's really big, natural, physical, and emotional changes that just come on in. But also part of what the King of Cups is trying to communicate to me is about looking forward. Is that we have spent so much time as individuals looking at our past, looking at our trauma, healing it. We have spent so much time looking at society, looking at government, looking at history and culture and all of the ways in which we need to deconstruct it, heal it, do the shadow work, do the trauma work, all of this stuff, which is great. It's good, which is also why we're enjoying this kind of moment where we're sort of collectively trying to sit in joy, trying to like keep that vision of a bright future, trying to be comfortable, right? Because we need a break, we're just people. But we've spent all this time on that, but we haven't spent nearly as much time on what we're constructing moving forward, on what we're building moving forward. And I think in many ways that is very much reflected in a lot of the messages that come out, right? In the readings and the personal readings and the collective readings and the zodiac readings. This is something that had come forward when I did the reading for readers, is that there was this repetition in the messages coming forward, and they're always focused and based on things that have already happened, and we're still trying to process and deal with it and deconstruct and come out of the paradigms, but we haven't spent nearly as much energy on building new paradigms, on building new structures, on all of that stuff. Now, the good news is that it seems like the divine has already created these timelines. They've already set the stage physically. Again, it's already fixed. The right players are fixed in the right place now. But the King of Cups, always for me, yes, he talks about emotional intelligence. Yes, he talks about emotional harmony and balance. But what he always speaks to me about most strongly is creative discipline. That we haven't spent, as of yet, enough time, and we really need to be taking more time away from being on the deconstruction crew, and instead focus our disciplined energy on construction, on what we're doing moving forward, on what we're going to do in the 10 of Pentacles. Again, part of it's the idea of we spent so much time trying to bring in particular things, a particular partner, a particular opportunity, a particular upgrade, just something, but we haven't really thought that much about what we're going to do with it, where we're going to go after that point of performance, after that point that it comes in, after the point of having it. What do we do with it? Where do we build past it? What kind of governments do we want? What steps are we taking to change the school system? Are we changing the way we're voting for people? How you want a relationship? How are you going to show up in that relationship? What does it look like in your business when the clients that you do want, when they actually come in? Where do you go from there? How do you structure that? Are you picking up what I'm throwing down? So much of it has been on this backlog, and the divine's gone ahead and they've constructed all this stuff. But now we need to come in and start thinking about what we're going to do when we get around the corner, because the eagle comes up next. And eagles, for me, always talk about like justice and America, right? Like, you know, the eagles always bring up the idea of like justice and harmony and balance to me, right? And it's the idea of the scale. Like, we've put too much pressure on the deconstruction or the past side of the scale, that it's now time to really focus the energy on balancing. The Justice card is 11 into a new alignment, right? That allows us to build into the future and what we're going to do. That's how we create balance in our life. Now, the owl is the last card in this spread, and it's coming out in reverse. And it's the idea that there's sort of another wall here, similar to the wall that we faced, that this Knight of Pentacles faced in the very beginning before you got to look behind the magic curtain. Now there seems to be another wall, and it might be that as you sit and you try and intuit like what you're gonna do in the new, how are you going to maintain your, like, what are you going to do with these clients? How are you going to show up in this relationship? Like, what's it going to look like, right? It's not just the idolization of the thing, but what you're going to do with the thing, how it works into the greater structure of your life, how it works into the greater structure of the collective story, like all of it. You might have a really difficult time seeing it. It's almost the idea with this King of Cups that you can feel it, but you can't quite visualize it. And I think part of the reason, what seems to be coming through, is the reason why it's difficult for us to visualize it is because it's never happened before. It's never happened before. These timelines have never existed before. And so if you kind of are trying to quantum jump around and look at past, present, future, you can look in all these different future timelines, but this one has never existed before to our knowledge, at least not within our collective memory. And that's why it's hard for us to perceive it. And the fact is because it's never existed before, we're kind of like these pioneer energies on this new timeline or this new frequency. And again, it's physical. It's not just theoretical, it's physical. And so we have to literally creative discipline, right? We have to build the vision because there isn't an archetype for it. There isn't an example for it. We've never lived it before. It's never existed before. But that world tells us that it's fixed in now. And so if you can't see it, there's a reason for it, because you can't see something that has never existed. You have to feel into that present moment and create it yourself. You have to draw out the blueprint. You have to figure it out. And again, it's through thinking differently, being more adaptable or more resourceful in your thinking. If I have this clean slate and I can kind of create anything around it, what is that going to be? It's this spark of innovation. It's this strike of divine genius that wants to come forward as the first ones in like a new timeline, in new energies that have never been present before. And we have to build it step by step as we go. And so there's almost this message of, do not respect the past. Do not give it any more time or energy. Your energy is needed in constructing the future. The divine sort of like, we've laid out like the parameters of this, but you guys have to take your crayons and you have to start filling it in. So start doing that. That is where your energy needs to be focused. So this is what I have. I don't know if I should do an extended reading. I'm not positive. I might do one. I'm going to mull on it for a moment. If I do an extended to this reading, it will be on Patreon, and I will also link it down below in the description box for you. If I do not, then you will only see the monthly reading links and the Patreon and all the other stuff. So it's going to be a surprise. Look in the description box. If there's an extended reading link, then there is an extended. If there is not, then there is not. I'm going to mull over it for a minute. But this is what I have for you. It's pretty interesting. I'm glad that we got it out into the open. I'm glad I spoke it out of my spirit. Maybe Libra can get their day in court now. I love you so much. I appreciate you for spending this time with me. If you need me in the meantime, you know where I'll be. See you later.